Hello and welcome to a special program to mark the occasion of World Water Day, which is observed every year on March 22 since the General Assembly of the United Nations designated that date in 1992. Of course, this is a very big day for GWI, the Ghana Water Incorporated, and with me this evening is a very experienced panel. But before I introduce them, let me tell you that the theme for this year's World Water Day is wastewater. And wastewater can be defined as any water that has been used in the home, in industrial activities, in agriculture, anything of the sort. So let's get straight into today's program. I'm going to introduce right on my immediate right, we have the Executive Director of Operations, Mr. Dwayne Chako. Beside him is Mr. Darren Chako, a sanitation consultant with GWI. Sitting beside him is Mr. Rensford Joseph, the sanitation manager at GWI, and next to him we have Mr. Dion Anderson, the head of water quality at GWI. Welcome to the program, men.
Thank you.
Usually they say what the thorn among the rose among many thorns, right? So yeah, I think we're accurate tonight. So we're gonna start off with Mr. Joseph. Given that you're the sanitation manager for GWI, usually we hear about gray water and black water when we talk about wastewater. Could you first of all tell us what is gray water and what is black water, and then further tell us what is the treatment necessary for this before we can use it?
All right, these are just names given to identify or define the sources of these two types of water. And we're talking specifically about municipal or domestic waste. So gray water would be the water that flows from everywhere else from in your home besides your toilets. So all of the water from your dishwasher, your washing machine, your bath sink, your kitchen sink, all of that would be considered gray water. And all of the water that comes from your toilet would be considered black water. And in this case, we talk about your flush toilet.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, the question is how do we treat them? Now, black water requires a lot more treatment because black water will be loaded with pathogen, a lot of nutrients that is not necessarily good for the marine environment. So that would require extensive treatment, up to and including a wastewater treatment plant. Of course, there are simple technology can be used, but basically you need a wastewater treatment plant to treat that. As a gray water, which is basically water with some amount of detergent and of course it will have some amount of pathogen inside of it. Depends on who's bathing and how much bathing is taking place. But that don't need as much treatment. Maybe you can have, there are a lot of simple technology, or simple methods in which you can treat that, and they don't require a lot of treatment because a lot of them you're not using that back in the home. You basically use that for your watering of your lawn, the plants, and washing your cars or so. So they don't need as much treatment. For Ghana, we can probably use a simple technology, maybe a slow sand filter, and we can have it pass through there and ready to be used again and your lawn.
Okay, but based on your knowledge, is this practice generally used in Ghana in terms of reusing gray water? Or would GWI encourage it in the near future given we have some methods to treat the gray water? Or even black water if we reach to that point?
Okay, well, we're focusing heavily going forward on wastewater reuse. Dwayne Chako, when he comes on, he will tell you that GWI focuses on reduction of non-revenue water. And not only reduction, but conserving of water. So anything that you can do to reduce the amount of water that you need to use would be good. So while I'm not sure that it is being practiced in Guyana, it is something that GWI is certainly encouraging and will be promoting as we go forward.
Okay. All right, so I want to skip over to Mr. Darren Chako. You are currently working on a program called the Guyana Wastewater Revolving Fund, which is aimed at improving water management in Guyana. Could you tell us a little bit more about this project and your target areas?
Well, Guyana was fortunate enough to have been selected to test some funding mechanism for wastewater treatment. And we have selected, well, we've chosen to test a revolving fund, which in revolving fund is just a pool of money set aside to treat wastewater. So what we have decided as a country to do was to use it to finance construction of wastewater treatment plants. So what we did was to make the monies available to private companies to have access to it to construct plants. But as Mr. Rensford Joseph said, wastewater treatment is not only in the commercial side, the domestic side too. So what we're trying to do now on the project is to make monies available to treat all wastewaters.
Okay.
So that's what the project is about right now.
Okay. And I know that there is a more specific aspect of the program, or the project rather, that deals with latrine, or what we call pit toilets here in Guyana. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, as you know, a large amount of the population utilizes pit latrines. Currently, about 70,000 households in Guyana
Wow.
uses pit latrines.
Is this mostly on the rural end and the coastland?
Well, yeah, mostly it's in the rural areas, but surprisingly, there's quite a lot of persons in the city of Georgetown that utilizes pit latrines. And we recognize the impact of pit latrines on the environment and to our health. Take, for instance, a pit latrine is simply a hole in the ground, but the coastline experiences severe flooding. So what happens when that water rises and get into that pit? Everything in those pits flow over. So at our end, we're saying that that's not an acceptable way. So we're trying to move away from that technology. And hopefully, within a couple of years, we're hoping to divert from pit latrines. We're hoping to, in another 5, 10, 15 years, to eliminate the use of pit latrines in Georgetown.
Okay, so what are some of your specific target areas currently?
Well, we want to start from the city. The city is the most populated area. Because of the denseness of the city, pit latrines is not actually the ideal facility to use. So we want to target the city first, test certain models, and if it's successful, we move it across to the various regions.
Okay. Okay, so if you're now joining us, we're talking on wastewater, which is the theme for World Water Day, observed on March 22 each year. A bit earlier in the program, Mr. Rensford Joseph, you mentioned reducing the use of water, because the theme also speaks to reducing, reusing, and recycling wastewater. Mr. Sheko, could you tell us a little bit about, I know when we reduce the use of water, you know, we're improving pressure for a lot of areas. What are some measures that GWI is looking at to ensure or enforce this message of reducing the use of water?
Well, as Mr. Joseph said, there's no, for a country as our population is just under 700,000, our per capita consumption is very high. It's around 80, 90 cubic meters a year. We have a higher per capita consumption of water, higher than China, higher than India, and these countries. So for a small country, we consume a lot of water. Our water consumption is around 10 million cubic meters a month. A month.
Wow.
It works out to just 120 million cubic meters. So we consume a lot of water as a country. But the reason is our studies have shown that a lot of this water is going as grey water, as Renford spoke about. We have a culture in Guyana where we bathe for long hours. We're laundering for long hours. So we waste a lot of water. And the thing is, we waste a lot of water, but then we complain that, that we don't have water when we waste a lot.
So, let me interject a bit there. So is there like an acceptable amount of time that one should bathe or take a shower?
No, well,
Just enough to be clean.
there's not an acceptable time, but compare if we go to the US and we take a bath in the US, I'm quite sure you wouldn't bathe for 50 minutes in the US because the bill that you'll receive at the end of the month you wouldn't like. So the thing is, when we talk about the reuse of water, it's important because if you can reduce your waste, your grey water, then the actual water that you use for consumption, you focus on that, then your volume of water you use is going to be much less, and then you have more available for other consumers. So the thing is once we can reduce the consumption or reduce the demand for water, then more water becomes available, and we can able to increase access across the country.
Okay. And while we're on that point of increasing access, could you tell us what in the recent past and in the near future, what are some areas that GWI is targeting to probably increase access in terms of the amount of hours that we provide, as well as for areas that haven't had access, to date? I know recently we provided into Mary North. We provided also in Andyville and Linden. These areas haven't had access to water only up until we provided access late last year. So what are some of the plans for GWI in improving access?
All right. I'll answer both questions in my explanation. Now, one of the problems we have in Guyana is a problem of planning. One of the water scarce country in the world is Jamaica. And I'll give an example. Jamaica don't have a problem with the volume of water they produce, but how they plan in terms of their housing is not effective in terms of water distribution. And that's one of the little issues that we have in Guyana, where our planning is not long enough. We plan for a year or two, so you might hear that we open a housing scheme in this area next year. But many times we don't plan for the water supply in these areas. So at GWI, many times we're always reactive. We're always trying to catch up. And if we continue in that regard, we'll always have a problem where there's an access issue. Now, many times it's not a problem where we can't access the water, but over the years, people are demanding a better service from GWI. They're demanding better pressures. They're demanding a better quality water. People don't want discolored water. People want water that they can put a glass of the pipe and be able to drink that water. People buying a lot of water in this country, which shouldn't be. And that's coming from the fact that when we have to pay the catch-up role, then many times we force to just drill a well. Rather than building treatment facilities, we now have to drill a well because we don't have the time to supply that. So what we're trying to do now is work closely with our colleagues at ministry communities, other housing within the ministry communities. So both the housing department and GWI is working closely now. So we'll be able to know exactly what's the plan for the next 2-3 years in a certain area, and we'll be able to now give people access and a longer supply. Most of the problems we have on the East Bank, in other areas like the East Bank, New Amsterdam, other areas like Linden, is where the population has outgrown the facility, and we're not able to. Even in central Georgetown, we have North Rumveld, East Rumveld, we have Sapphire. These areas, we're not able to sustain the supply because the plants haven't been expanded, but the population have grown considerably.
Okay, I hear you definitely there. And Mr. Anderson, you're quite quiet in that corner there, so I want to bring you in. Mr. Shako touched on the point of playing catch up and not being able to have enough time to build water treatment plants, because we know that this is a big assignment. So what is GWI currently doing in the area of water quality to ensure that, sometimes people complain about discoloration in water and so forth? What are we doing in the various regions to ensure water quality, whether it's for ensuring that it is okay for consumption, as well as to take out discoloration or iron?
Thanks very much for that question, Liana. First of all, what we're doing currently as regards water treatment has a lot to do with the source of water, the characteristic quality of the raw water that we use. And we know quite frequently we hear the statement that Guyana is a land of many waters. But the question is that water readily available for potable use?
True.
And because that's not so, the water has to undergo treatment before it becomes potable, before we can supply it to the customers. And here in Guyana, we utilize two main sources of raw water. That would be the surface water and the groundwater. The surface water would be like our rivers, or lakes, or creeks. For example, in Linden, they make use of water. The Demerara River, Bartica, they make use of surface water there as well. And even here in Georgetown, we make use of the Lamaha Canal. And surface water typically has high turbidity because of the soil types and the vegetation, you'd have organic matter, natural organic matter dissolved into the water. So a specific treatment process is required there. And just to give you a brief overview of what are the treatment stages that the water undergoes, we utilize a process of coagulation and flocculation, which uses chemicals such as alum and lime to basically remove the color, remove the turbidity, and other suspended metals and suspended material from the water. And of course, after this process of coagulation and flocculation, it goes through settlement and filtration, and finally disinfection. Many times persons are of the view that the water just simply has to undergo a filtration method and you disinfect and that's it, but it's a bit more complex than that. It requires some quite complex chemistry as regards the treatment processes, having all the dosages correct and that kind of thing. As it regards the groundwater, which as the name implies has to do with the wells. Now well water typically has a lot of dissolved gases like hydrogen sulfide, methane, and other gases. You have also dissolved metals, iron, manganese. And you touched in the question you asked about sometimes people complain of discolored water. And this can be predominantly from a bit of residual iron that may be in the water, both after treatment or that would have been accumulated in the pipelines. And therefore, to get rid of these contaminants in the groundwater, different processes required. So it's not necessarily a one process fit all, but a specific process where it involves aeration, sedimentation, filtration, ultimately disinfection. Now, persons would see the aeration in action quite a lot without probably even recognizing it. If you pass on the back road at the treatment plant there, on the east bank, also on the east coast and many other areas, you would see water flowing down. And persons, I remember persons saying to me, is it that we're wasting water? But it's simply a process whereby the water passes through some perforated plates and you have a natural convection of the air into the water. So you're actually transferring oxygen into the water. And the purpose for that, you achieve two main goals, which would be to strip the water of the dissolved gases as well as to introduce oxygen to oxidize the iron and dissolved metals in the water. And as you oxidize these metals, they can now be filtered out, because without the aeration, you can't remove necessarily the metals that easily. And so that's a brief overview of the treatment process. And so after that treatment, in order to maintain that the quality is consistently compliant with WHO parameters, we work, we have a central laboratory which tests the water quality on a very frequent basis. We've also moved to establish mini labs throughout the country. And these mini labs have the primary aim of testing the water on a 24-hour basis. So for example, here in central Georgetown, we're testing the water 24/7. So even while the population sleeps, we're testing the water so as to identify if there is any particular stage or a particular deviation from the water quality, so that we can arrest that problem in the very early stage before it actually becomes too late. And that's how we basically monitor the quality and basically keep it compliant with WHO standards. Right? We're also working in collaboration with PAHO, regional health officers, and Ministry of Health to have a collaborative effort as regards monitoring sites in the distribution, monitoring homes, so that we can ensure that the water received by our residents, they're actually complying with the WHO standards.
Well, I must say that was a very in-depth explanation that you give me there, and very I like it because you mentioned that we have a unique procedure for the different sources of water, whether it might be groundwater, surface, or what is the other one?
Groundwater.
And sometimes
Typically.
Okay, and so because actually our managing director, Dr. Richard Van Westars, he's very keen on water quality. I know that for sure because he's a physician. Well, thank you so much for that, Dion. Well, we're going to take a short break. You're watching World Water Day with GWI, a discussion on World Water Day, rather. And when we come back, we will continue this discussion on wastewater, which is the theme for this observance. Welcome back. You're watching World Water Day discussion with GWI. Of course, a special program to mark the observance, which is celebrated every year on March 22. Okay, so I want to invite you again, Mr. Ransford Joseph. The theme is wastewater. So I want to ask you, what are GWI's future plans as it relates to treating water? You mentioned that we don't treating wastewater. That is, we don't do it currently. What are the plans for treating it and possibly reusing it in the near or distant future?
Thank you again for the question. I think as a country, we have no choice but to get on board as it relates to wastewater treatment. We are now a signatory to the Cartagena Convention and its LBS protocols. So we have no choice but to get on board and begin to look at what we discharge into the marine environment. GWI recognize its responsibility, and we are forging forward with our wastewater treatment. We've moved, I would like to say, significantly as it relates to what we plan on doing at one of our facilities at Tugwell Septic Receiving Station. We are in the process of testing to get the water characteristic, after which we move in towards design. We already approach crew, Guyana. So for funding, once all goes well, we are moving towards constructing a wastewater treatment plant at the Tugwell facility. But another, well, the Kazakhstan construction, there's a facility there that we will re-engineer so that it's no longer a collecting facility, but a treatment facility. And that's just for Tugwell. We work in, like Mr. Shaker mentioned earlier, in close collaboration with everybody within the Ministry of Communities, both at the local government and the CHMPHN. So at that local government, and we're looking at what we can do about treating septic sludge, because that is an issue right now in Guyana. I think Mr. Shaker mentioned earlier that there are a number of septic tanks around the city, and septic tanks, according to the septic tank code, must be clean or should be clean every 2 years. But then when we remove that sludge, where do we take it? That is a problem in Guyana. So we working to erect a facility for the treating of septic tank sludge. The other thing that we do in GWI, trying to play a major role or a lead role in that, is looking at working together in collaboration with the Central Housing and Planning Authority and their housing scheme projects. So we working with them to look at the best solutions for wastewater management. Be it septic tank, if we're gonna go with septic tank, then we wanna look at improve septic tank. If we're gonna go with centralized treatment, we want the solution that best fit the community.
Right.
So whether it's package plant or if this community has a space for us to go with pond system, we want to go with that. And of course, we have to take in consideration the cost, capital costs, along with operation and maintenance costs. So yes, we're working. Those are some of the areas in which GWI is forging ahead.
I know that you have a very literally dirty job when it comes to sanitation. Just kidding. But what are some of the challenges you might face, you know, because I know you deal with the septic tanks, the actual black water we spoke about earlier, but you also deal with the manholes and restaurants and so forth. What are some of the challenges in this regard?
I would want to say the challenge, one of the biggest challenge is lack of education as relates to how to treat with wastewater. A lot of time people see wastewater. Sometimes I don't even know if they see it as wastewater, but people go to the sink, to the bath, and the toilet, and when they finish, they just move on and not realizing that they've created, I like to say, a problem. And when a problem is created, then there needs to be an engineering solution to fix it. So what is happening around this? Let's look at the sewer system, for example. The sewer system is that people use the system not recognizing that they can harm the system based on their behavior. So like that's why I said there's a lack of education. So I think one of GWI's role now is trying to educate the public as to how to treat with the system, what to not allow to go down into the system, what they should do as related to encountering or discovering an open manhole or open chamber, uncovered chamber inside of a yard or in the street. Because a lot of time we have a bad culture in Ghana. Once we see a hole in the ground, we kind of put things inside.
It's automatically a garbage, right?
Yeah, so you go in the manhole and there's just about everything inside of that. Because I don't know, maybe we played too much marble as men.
Yeah.
So people just put things in hole. But a lot of time when you put those stuff in the hole, what it does is it clogs the line, and if it do get down to the pump station, then it damage our electromechanical equipment. So it's important people understand that the sewer system for the most part is a gravity flow system. And gravity, there's nothing pushing it. It's just going to flow by gravity. So if you put anything in there that's going to cause a blockage, then
Yes.
the water would not flow.
Right, it
What is
obstruct
going to
that flow.
happen is going to overflow at your home. And
Oh.
I've seen some cases where it overflowing at in the compound, but in people's house. The toilet try to flush and it's not going anywhere. That's because of what you caused.
Yeah, I think
to
our
enter.
our ad just before we came back addressed that the guy tried to throw newspaper down the toilet.
Yeah, newspaper is bad for the toilet. And I see a lot of, I probably should mention this, a lot of companies are moving away from the regular toilet tissue and using this modern one. But that is not, for me, I've been experiencing a lot of problem with that because that is easy to flush or dissolve
Right.
as the regular toilet paper. So you find a lot of places we starting to experience clogging. One of our biggest challenge though is restaurants
Oh.
because people just in the business for the money and not recognizing that if you don't ensure that the oil and grease does not get into the system to clog the system, then you're going to cause a problem for yourself. So when you once you have a restaurant, it's important that you put in. One of the proprietor of a restaurant came in to us just last week, and he was trying to convince us that he should use a smaller grease trap than the one we recommend. And I
Really?
was trying to explain to him, you go with a smaller one, grease trap, and then you have to clean it every day. So rather than trying to cut your initial capital cost and end up with a large
Right.
maintenance cost, it's very better you go with appropriate size trap so that your maintenance cost is reduced. So like I said, one of the biggest problems is getting Guyanese to understand the importance of treating properly with the wastewater sewer system.
So Dwayne, as the executive director of operations, Mr. Joseph mentioned reducing our maintenance costs and even for restaurants reducing their cost. But what are the penalties or what are some of the measures we are taking at GWI against persons who, might not be following our rules and, regulations? What are some of the systems we are putting in place to help curb this challenge that Mr. Joseph spoke about?
Block them off the network.
Makes sense.
That's, I think we've exhausted a lot of options in GWI. We've done a lot of sensitization. We've brought in restaurant owners. We've spoken to them. We've given them time. We've even offered support to them. And many times, what hurts me and what gets me upset is that the action doesn't affect them alone. Many times we have blockage in an entire area just because of one restaurant, or two restaurants would have blocked an entire area just because of their action. And I'm saying it on television. I've said it to Mr. Joseph that I'm not going to continue with that. So once we realize that a restaurant is not complying, and we realize that the grease trap is not properly sized, we'll basically take them off the network. And what we'll do, we'll block them until we recognize that it's properly sized, and then we're going to allow them to continue using our network, because we cannot continue with overflows in the city, in the heart of the city, because of a few restaurants that really are very selfish and they're just looking after their own gains. So we're going to block them.
Okay, I hear you. We are very stern on that. Let me tell you that for sure. So, okay, so Mr. Darren Shako, we spoke a bit earlier about your project, and as we observe World Water Day, you're looking at the latrines and so forth. As you look at domestic and commercial properties, what is the ratio of persons who use, I know you mentioned a large amount, about 70,000 you mentioned?
Yeah, uses latrines.
Right.
Pit
But what
latrines.
is the ratio of commercial to domestic properties that use latrines to flush toilets? If you get what I'm
Well,
saying.
in terms of, I haven't came across any commercial properties using latrines to date, but
Even in the outlying areas.
I haven't.
Okay, you
Maybe
haven't,
they
okay.
exist
Uh-huh.
because we haven't done much work in the outlying areas. Our
As-
work is
okay.
being focused
Central Georgetown
Central
first.
Georgetown, you know, looking at the companies, the bigger companies that generate the large volumes of
Right.
wastewater. But that's not to say that
They don't exist.
they
or-
don't exist,
Right.
because we find that persons are comfortable using the pit latrines. It's been with us for a long time, but surprisingly, people have been moving away. Between 2002 to 2012, the census figures show that approximately 100% of persons, say for instance, 70,000 using latrines now. In 2002, it was 120 persons, households using pit latrines. Now the volume of septic tanks has increased. So we have persons, well, I guess it's due to the economic development of the
Right.
country. People are finding it, you know, necessary to change from the pit latrines. But as one thing I want to mention is that the stuff that Mrs. Joseph and Mrs. Sheko spoke about is concentrated to the sewer system. But it's only a small percentage of households in Guyana actually is connected to a sewer
Right.
system. That's about 8%. Guyana, we have a few other satellite areas. So majority of the persons or the households in Guyana utilizes a septic tank right now. So you see the importance of why we need to consider or have pay more attention to septic tanks. And with our agenda to reduce the amount of persons using pit latrines, septic tanks will become more, well, will attract more of our attention. But currently, to answer your question, I don't think commercial persons should be using pit latrines, because if you're making money, come on. I think you can afford to construct a
And why,
septic tank.
why I asked about in the outlying areas, I actually experienced it the other day. I
You
mean,
did?
it wasn't a big commercial establishment, but it was in Region 7.
Oh.
And yes, I had to hold it.
When you went to a shop, I mean a shop, the most time the commercial area and the household, they're interconnected.
Right.
So I think you would expect that.
So you mentioned that a lot of persons are comfortable using the latrine toilets, but is it a case where when you approach them, they are reluctant to make that conversion?
Well, what we found actually, it's a strange, Ghana is a strange place. As I said, pit latrines have been with us for about 200 years. And it seemed to be ingrained in us, you know, we started doing some things. And
Yeah.
even so, even though some persons might have grown economically, some persons are still inclined to use pit latrines. I've recently completed a study on sanitation and looked at pit latrines. And what I found, and maybe you know these guys may not like it, is that some of the usage might be associated with if they have access to a portable water or a water connection. Because if you don't have a water connection, the option is a pit latrine. In saying that, some persons, some households have a water connection, constructed a septic tank, but maintain their pit latrines.
Really?
Yes. So it's a cultural thing. I don't think, because it's been with us so long, they don't see the negative side of it. As I mentioned before, if it flows over, if it breeds rodents, you know, rats run in the pit latrines and then run into your house. You don't know what to transfer. The pit latrines flood regularly if it floods. And plus, mosquitoes. And plus, it's not, for me and for most persons that I've spoken, it's not comfortable. For instance, I was telling someone today, when I woke up 2 days ago, I went into my toilet with my laptop. Would you be comfortable to go into? Would you able to be comfortable to go into your toilet and into your pit latrine with
You get all
with the
comfy.
bees, with the flies buzzing below you, and you know, just sit and use your laptop? No. So one of the things in improving your sanitation is linked to improved dignity. During my research, I found that most people didn't want to talk about toilets. You see them shying away from talking about it. It's really because they weren't too comfortable with their current position. So if we improve people's sanitation from filter train to septic, we can improve the dignity. And people can, in the mornings, you can defecate in comfort.
You can
You
stay
know?
in your toilet.
Yes, you can sit and sing.
Okay, I hear you definitely. All right. So Dion, I want to ask you. We want to go back a little bit to water quality. I mean, we're talking about sanitation, what is good for your health, and so forth. But we spoke that a lot of persons have been complaining about water discoloration and so forth. What are some of the areas that you have been able to make some improvements in? If you can outline any areas, and also which areas are next on your agenda for improvement in water quality?
Right, as it regards improvements in the water quality, definitely the immediate the immediate Georgetown and its environs, we've received feedback that the water quality has been improved significantly in most of the areas, and this is owed primarily to two things: the increase in water pressure, because as you would know, um, when you have intermittent supply, as we have in a lot of outlying areas of Georgetown, there's negative pressures created that could introduce contaminants from around the pipeline from the distribution network.
Leakages.
So the leakages can contribute to that. So when you introduce the contaminants with this negative pressure, you have build up in your pipeline. So whenever the pressure comes on again, you have this flushing velocity that actually
Right.
creates turbulence in the pipeline. So to combat that, what we've done is increase the pressure to have it at a more consistent pressure throughout the entire day, so that the water quality can be maintained. That prevents growth, biofilm growth. It prevents iron and turbidity accumulation in your pipelines. So that's one way we've definitely improved or implemented measures to improve water quality. Also, as I mentioned before, the mini labs. The mini labs are now testing 24/7 every hour on the hour. So that allows both the operators and consumers to basically have to provide a better quality or a consistent quality to the consumers. On the operational side, with these with this constant monitoring, you can basically detect any problem before it goes out to the customers. And also in some areas we're looking at implementing or improving the treatment efficiency of the actual treatment plant.
Okay.
So as I mentioned before, we have the aeration systems, we have our disinfection systems, we have our coagulation systems. So it's about zooming into the chemical dosages, zooming into the actual operational efficiency, and not just looking at it physically, but doing statistical analysis of historical data to see how was the removal efficiency over the years. Has it been declining? For example, in the case of iron, has the iron removal efficiency been declining? What could have caused that? And we've identified cases where we need to optimize, for the choice of a better approach here, to optimize the treatment process by improving the pH, by adding pH correction agents. Also improving the oxygen transfer by looking at different technologies. As you would have known, we would have engaged with the Dutch with regards to seeing some of the technologies that they've been using. They've also visited us, and we're learning from each other as it regards the different technologies, because whereas we might be more prone to an American design, you have British designs, you have
Yes.
Dutch designs, and we're looking at the treatment efficiencies of each one of these technologies, and basically to see how we can implement and optimize our existing systems. In some of the areas we've, and I'm sure Mr. Shako might be able to touch a bit more on that, but we've implemented Sequest.
Right.
And that's another form of treatment, whereas it's a sequestering agent, and that simply means it captures the iron within the water and prevents it from oxidizing. Because the main problem with the iron, when it's oxidized, it actually causes staining, it causes discoloration in the water. So with this Sequest and optimizing the dosages, we were able to now prevent the staining ability of the iron, prevent the discoloration of the water. It cleans your pipelines, and there are several benefits attached to it. So the whole approach is to have an integrated approach of infrastructural development in the treatment plants, optimization of the treatment processes, which has a lot to do with the chemical dosages, the filter material, the filter media that's being used, the process efficiency, and these measures.
Okay, so basically, Mr. Sheiko can just go right ahead and wash his white shirt without being fearful.
Very white.
As you can see,
So you're saying this is an example?
This was washing Georgetown.
Nice, I hear you. Okay, so tell us a little bit more. Is Sequence going to be a long-term use for GWA?
But it's an interim use until we're able to build a treatment plant.
In whichever area?
In whichever area. So we've completed Agricola, the entire Essequibo coast,
Nice.
Clonbrook, Ithaca. We're looking at Bachelor Adventure. So we'll be moving to the entire East Coast, LBI and these areas. So by the end of this year, we're hoping to touch around 80% of the areas that we have untreated water.
Okay. All right, sounds great. All right, we're going to take another short commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to wrap things up on our topic for today, which is wastewater. And yeah, see you back after on the other side of the break.
Hey GWI? Yes. Man, the damn toilet overflowing again, man. And I like flush with some newspaper. What do you mean I can't flush newspaper down the toilet? The newspaper car's in the backup?
Don't be in this position. The government of Guyana has invested in excess of $6.5 million to rehabilitate the sanitation system in Georgetown. But you must do your part. All businesses involved in food preparation must install grease traps. Residents must desist from flushing plastics, newspapers, cloth, or any other solid material via toilets. The system was made to accommodate human waste only. Desist from flushing condoms via toilets. Dispose of these in a garbage bin. Do not remove or tamper with the chamber covers. Do not dump garbage, construction waste, or any material via sewer chambers.
You mean I can't even flush condoms down the toilet? Well, I guess I definitely owe GWI an apology. I'm sorry.
All right, thanks for staying with us. You're watching a World Water Day discussion with GWI. Okay, so as we wrap things up, Dwayne, could you tell us a little bit about leakages and what we are doing? I know Mr. Anderson, he spoke a lot in depth actually about water treatment and what we're doing to improve quality, and this is a big deal for our managing director as well. So leakages tend to compromise the quality as well as pressure and all of that. So what is GWI doing in this regard in terms of identifying and repairing and so forth?
I think on the part of GWI, I think we have to, they say, you have to fix your home first.
Right.
I think we have to be more responsive. When many times leaks are reported and we're not as responsive, but we have to do better. We're losing about 30% of the water that we produce through leakages.
Okay.
And that's not very good. That water could have gone to other areas and increased pressures and so on. So what we're doing in GWI, because we see leakage as critical, we've extended our workforce. So what we've done, we've zoned the country into small areas. The entire country, and entire coast, that is, and all the regions we've zoned. And what we've done is that we've placed crews and contractors in each one of these zones. And what it allows us to do is to have a focus in each area, each village, a more community approach so that we can be able to identify leaks. And that is one of the approach we've been working with. The second thing, what we've done, we've developed an application that allow anyone to report a leak. So what happens is that we're presently in the final stage of testing. This week will be the final stage of testing. And then early next week we launch this app. And what the app allows you to do that, you go to the Play Store or the App Store with your mobile phone and you download the app. And if you see a leak anywhere, you click on the app and you take a picture and you just click send. You can send the information, Rob on King Street,
Or you can turn on your GPS.
or you can turn on your
The
GPS
location.
location, and we pick up the exact location where the
Okay.
leak is. This now goes directly to the contractor. The picture comes into us and also goes to the contractor within that zone, and he's able to respond. So we're pushing ahead with that. We're trying our best to really reduce the amount of leakage. Our aim in Jidabai is to move to 24-hour supply. We would like people to wake up 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, and take a bath. You know? We're trying to, as we say, we're trying to remove the black tank culture that we have in Guyana. And secondly, we're trying to increase pressures so that people are going to the US for holiday and coming back, and they're saying, why is it I can't get water upstairs? And they're correct.
Yeah.
So that's the aim, and we pushing. We have a 5-year or 4-year plan that by the end of that we have to, and that's our goal, to move the pressures to first floor at least, and move the supply from 12-hour and 16-hour to 24. And leakage is the way we gotta go.
All right, that sounds great. Sounds like a plan. All right, as we wrap things up quickly, tell us about your project, Darren, and who can benefit, and what are the opportunities for persons out there, who have latrine toilets. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, on the Guyana Wastewater Revolving Fund, currently we're looking at the commercial entities. If any company wants to improve their wastewater management, they can have access to the funds. It's a loan, sorry. It's not a grant that most persons are expecting, but it's a soft loan, means you have small interest rate, quite reduced interest rates, and you can do a great job for the environment and health-wise. But I know we spoke about a lot about septic tanks and latrines and stuff, and person might think, hey, I wanna get a septic tanks, and may not be able to afford it.
Right.
Because you don't want somebody coming to you driving a 4x4 and asking, hey, can you get a septic tank for me? You should be able to afford one. But there's projects and programs out there that can help low-income households to access septic tank. Shortly, GIDA by itself will be rolling out a program under the WISIP, a project under the WISIP program, to convert some pit latrines to septic tank in some areas. Persons should keep looking at the papers. I think it's in Region 3, Region 6, Region 4, Georgetown, and up the East Bank. So if persons are interested and cannot afford it, then they can apply.
Okay, so they stay tuned to the press and so forth
Yes.
for details on how they can apply for that.
Yes.
All right, quickly, Mr. Joseph, any final words on our theme for wastewater this year?
When Mr. Shaker spoke about being proactive, I realized I need to mention what we're doing on the wastewater side as related to Georgetown sewer system. We recognize that sewage overflowing on a person's property is not healthy. It's not something you want to happen, right? And even though we're talking about preserving the system and stuff like that, we have to do our part. So what we do, we have a proactive program where we go into every single home within the sewer area, and we are doing maintenance, and we're going to be doing it throughout the year. Come next year, we're going to be doing the same thing. What we want to do is prevent a blockage.
Right.
So we're going to be there, and we're going to be preventing, if there's a build-up, or whatever potential for blockage, we're trying to remove that. And I also must mention here that we have within the sewer system more than 7 hospitals that are connected to the sewer system. Hospital waste are dangerous waste that we don't want to come and cause injury to us, neither to the system. And therefore, this is an appeal to all hospitals within the sewer area to ensure that your hospital waste are properly disposed. There are regulations and even laws, I believe, governing how hospital waste should be disposed of. And therefore, we asking that all of the administrators to begin to comply, so that we don't end up having persons injured, or even the system injured, because of what the hospitals allowed to get into the system.
Bad disposal, I understand. Mr. Anderson, final words on your front of water quality.
I'd just like to remind our populace that we, as an entity, we have the mandate to provide the highest quality of water to our consumers, and irrespective of the geographical location, irrespective of where they are or the source of water they're using, we will ensure that your water meets WHO parameters. We will ensure that they're supplied with highest quality of water, and we would make sure also that whatever necessary interventions are needed, it will be implemented so as to provide that consistent, good quality of water so that you can have confidence in the water coming through your taps.
Right. Thank you so much, Dion. Thank you so much to my panel, our expert and experienced panel from GWI. Of course, you are watching a program on World Water Day. Of course, it is observed every year on March 22, and this year it's under the theme wastewater. We want to encourage you to reduce the amount of water you use, and of course, you can do this by, flushing your toilet less. Is that right, Mr. Joseph? There are so many ways. You can visit our Facebook page, though, for tips on these and more. You can find GWI on all social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You just use the username Guyana Water Inc., and you can find us there. And for more information, you can also contact us via those social media platforms. My name is Leanna Bradshaw. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.
Hey GWI? Yes. Man, the damn toilet overflowing again, man. And I like flush with some newspaper. What do you mean I can't flush newspaper down the toilet? The newspaper cast in the backup?
Don't be in this position. The government of Guyana has invested in excess of $6.5 million to rehabilitate the sanitation system in Georgetown. But you must do your part. All businesses involved in food preparation must install grease traps. Residents must desist from flushing plastics, newspapers, cloth, or any other solid material via toilets. The system was made to accommodate human waste only. Desist from flushing condoms via toilets. Dispose of these in a garbage bin. Do not remove or tamper with chamber covers. Do not dump garbage, construction waste, or any material via sewer chambers.
You mean I can't even flush condoms down the toilet? Well, I guess I definitely owe GWI an apology. I'm sorry.